Namaskar, I am Kharel, and I would like to thank AAERI and Dheerajji for bringing us all together. And the idea of this panel, in my view, is to just assemble people who have returned from Australia after obtaining their higher education and just discuss what they are up to in Nepal. The fact that they have returned is not a very usual, phenomenon in the Nepali context. And what motivated them to go to Australia? Why did they return? And what are they doing in Nepal? And what future do they foresee for Nepal in the days to come? And perhaps because I am an economist, I have been tasked to moderate this session, which has this economic dimension. But I'm fully cognizant of the fact that not all of you are economists, but some of you, or at least 3 of you, are entrepreneurs. And I consider the other gentleman to be a social, entrepreneur who is, contributing through science, technology, innovation. Now, I will be introducing them and asking them questions individually. But just to speak about myself in just a couple of sentences, I am an economist by training, and I have a PhD in economics from the University of Melbourne with specialization in international trade and applied microeconometrics. And currently I am executive director at South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, which is a think tank based in Kathmandu. And thinking, analyzing and writing on matters economics with a special focus on international trade is my source of bread and butter as well as my passion. Oftentimes, the discourse or narrative on, on the Nepali economy is about so many people are going abroad. Yes, that's a unique aspect. About a third of Nepali households have at least one member abroad or receive remittances. About a quarter of GDP is equal to the remittances received by Nepal. There are few countries in the world where you can get this type of, statistic. And that has been associated oftentimes in policy discourse with labor drain, brain drain, and so on. But here we are talking about returnees. So if proof were ever needed, there is a proof, but I don't know on what scale this is happening, that people are returning and contributing to society. Now, Australia, from the Australian perspective, Nepal is actually a very important country which punches way above its otherwise, weight in terms of population size and economic size of Nepal. For example, Nepal is the third, largest source of, the third largest destination of services exports, education services exports for Australia. Nepal is a leading source of students, for Australia. So Nepal figures quite prominently in Australia's balance of, payments. But on the other side of the ledger, we have people going there, staying there, and also sending remittances. So Nepal, by one estimate, for Nepal, Australia is the 6th largest source of remittances for Nepal. But then there are also people who live there, have developed ties and networks there. Some of them have invested there, here, export IT-related services as well as business process outsourcing-related services, as we just heard. And some of them have returned and are contributing to society. So to begin with, let me begin with Abhishek Shrestha ji. Now he is currently the managing director of Yeti Distillery and Yak Brewing Company, which are 2 of Nepal's leading beverage ventures. And you did your Bachelor's of Business and Hospitality Management from Macquarie University, followed by Masters of Professional Accounting from Western Sydney University. Now, what motivated you to go to Australia and choose the topics that you chose? And then what motivated you to return to Nepal?
Yeah, one of the main reasons I went to Australia was obviously I was trying to do my credit transfer because I earlier studied in Singapore, so I had an option to go to Australia or America. So, but then it had a better opportunity and better education in regards to hospitality. So that's why I choose to go to Australia. Of course, the weather as well, but that's secondary. And one of the two reasons I decided to come back in 2006 was it was personal, mostly, but also kind of strategic in regards to kind of, obviously there's the personal reason to come back to your family and help your business grow, your family business grow, but then obviously I saw a lot of opportunity in Nepal to be able to capitalize, so hence I decided to come back.
Now, I would like to move on to Dr. Samir Dixit ji. He is a prominent Nepalese biomedical scientist, and he earned dual master's degrees in biotechnology, immunology, recombinant DNA technology from the University of Wollongong. And immediately after that, he pursued his PhD also in Australia to obtain a PhD in biotechnology from Western Sydney University, which he completed in 2004. And then he returned to Nepal and has been contributing to Nepali society. Again, what motivated you to go to Australia at that time? And surely people from Nepal did go abroad for higher education then, but certainly it was not an exodus that we see right now. You know, there were not that many people. But then there must have been a reason why you settled on, Australia. Or if it was motivated by your chosen area of specialization, which is also pretty unique, please, mention that. And again, why you returned to, back to Nepal. And as an economist, oftentimes we weigh our models in terms of benefits and costs, right? There are benefits of returning home, and there are also certain costs. And those benefits and costs are pecuniary as well as non-pecuniary. So you can, shed light on those aspects. Over to you.
So the reason I went to Australia was none other than Crocodile Dundee, but that's jokes aside, it's not. Many of you might not even know Crocodile Dundee. In my time, when I was thinking of Australia, it was very famous. But no, Australia happened by fluke for me, to be very honest. I was in the States. As I was, after 4 years in the US, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I was in England for about 6-7 months. And while I was in England, my father met someone by fluke from Wollongong University at that time. This person was visiting from Wollongong. My father was here, I was in England. And he got into talking, and this whole concept of biotechnology came about. And my dad, he contacted me in England and said, this is something that's upcoming, biotechnology. Australia seems to be doing good, it's leading in a lot of the new science and technology field. Are you interested? And I said, well, I'm studying science, so I said, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. And I was thinking, Australia, wow, weather, we drive on the same side of the road, that's a good thing. I kind of prefer being on the left side of the road rather than the right. So all these things came together, and yeah, so I did a bit of homework myself. Internet was just starting to be popular in 1995, 96. And yeah, so that made me become very attracted to Australia. And yeah, at that time the exodus was minimal. There were hardly any Nepalis in Australia at that time, 95, 96. But when I was there, there's very few Nepalis, and I went there and studied. So that was how I got there. But I was always sure about coming back to Nepal. Since I left for US when I was 18, and when I came back when I was 31, I was always clear that I would be coming back and doing something. And the education I acquired in Australia, all the way to PhD in the field of biotechnology, I felt that Nepal lacked a lot of the biotechnology-related subjects, especially the implementation part. And I wanted to do something in Nepal, so it was not a very tough choice. So I decided, no, this is something I want to do in Nepal, and I left Australia and I came back.
Actually, I was also about to ask you about the internet thing, and you just mentioned it, because at that time, when you went there in 94, 95, the internet, was a luxury at that time. And okay. And actually, in my case, I was also always, I had made up my mind that I would return. And I went for my PhD in Australia after I had acquired some work experience here. I had already established myself as a trade economist here, working in a think tank. And I was looking for a coursework, a PhD program that combined rigorous coursework, 2 years at least of rigorous coursework with solid research. And here I found, University of Melbourne. And then I had made up my mind that I would, return. And apart from that, being with my entire family, my parents, apart from my wife and kid, was also a reason, And I live with my parents, and I'm proud of that. So now I'd like to come to Arushree Sharma. Arushree Sharma, who is an entrepreneur, and she is also a passionate community advocate. She is co-founder and chairperson of AAERI Nepal, which is a natural wellness brand that is dedicated to all natural Nepal-made products. And that sets off my economist mind as a trade economist that, well, we have high potential to export nature-based products, which we have not been able to really exploit. I'll come to that later. She is also director at Change Digital, which is a digital consultancy. And you did your undergraduate degree from the University of Sydney, majoring in environmental science and international relations. So over to you, the same overall question.
Thank you for your question. For me, why I chose Australia was firstly, of course, because of its global education. I chose University of Sydney because it was ranked on the top 5 in Australia and top 30 in the world. And also another reason was because of the university. The quad, it was really beautiful, so I always wanted my graduation picture there. But obviously because of COVID, I couldn't do that. The reason I chose to study international relations and environment was because though I always wanted to do business from a young age, I wanted to broaden my aspects, so I decided to study something from interdisciplinary courses, so I get a broader idea of not only business but different aspects around. The reason I returned, I think all of you mentioned, was I always wanted to come back. Even when I was going, I had decided that I would come back and I would want to start something of my own here. I wanted to create jobs, make a difference, and give back to my society, my community. So that was the reason I decided to come back from Australia. And also because of COVID, I had to speed up the process of coming back.
And let me share a personal note here. When I returned from Melbourne after completing my PhD, actually much I wanted to, I didn't attend my graduation ceremony, and one main reason was my daughter. Actually, I wanted to spend as much time as I could with her, and I wanted to sort of compensate for the fact that I wasn't really with her for about let's say 1.5 years of her life. I was here when she was born, but I had to go back to pursue the last leg of my PhD. And indeed, you are creating jobs, and which is very important for Nepal. This is just one fact that I would like to share. There are as many Nepalese, especially Nepali adult males, working abroad as there are Nepali adult males doing a wage job in Nepal, which means that wage job, a decent wage job is a very scarce commodity here. And it's high time that we create jobs. And now, again, coming to our other panelist, Ashlesha Karki, who is Deputy Managing Director of Hotel Mechi Crown, with over 5 years of hands-on leadership in Nepal's hospitality and tourism sector. And she is a fellow alumnus of University of Melbourne, Parkville, where she majored in a dual degree of accounting and management. Right? So she knows the hospitality business, and she's steering a hotel that, by my reckoning, is the first ever 5-star deluxe hotel in Nepal. Right? But mind you, this is located outside of Kathmandu in Jhapa, and tourism diversification is something that our policymakers have been harping on for decades, but we are yet to fully achieve it. But here she is steering a hotel outside of Kathmandu, obviously seeing prospects for Nepal's tourism diversification. So again, to begin with, what motivated you and why did you return?
For me personally, since a young age, I knew I wanted to be somewhere along the business line. So for me, financial accounting and management were two things I knew I wanted to study. And from a young age, I mean since I was like 11, 12 years old, when all my friends didn't even care about career and college, I knew I needed to get my finance literacy up there and my management literacy. So for me, I did my high school in India, so I had a college counselor who recommended the University of Melbourne for me. Considering it just didn't rank top within Australia, but specifically for accounting and management, it ranked top 15 in the world. And that was my get-go. I was like, I need to get my IB grades, I need to get into the University of Melbourne. And it was really different because my high school had a big sort of tradition of going to the States or to the UK, so Australia was a bit different to that path. And I decided this is where I have to get my things sorted, and plus the weather and the beach. I'm an ocean person. I love the ocean. So for me, Australia was a paradise of a place to be at. And I knew along with my education, I had to take care of my mental health. So for me, Australia seemed like the best option out of every place all over the world. And coming back to Nepal was no question for me. So for me, my father had really humble beginnings in Nepal, and he's created a big legacy, a big dynasty for himself, and I had to come back because I wanted to continue that. I needed to take his hard work forward. So for me, my family business has been an inspiration, and I knew since day one that I had to come back home and see what's lacking, sort of, and then get that even above, not just in Nepal, but towards the global business economy.
And now, coming to the next set of questions, this is basically about how you are utilizing the knowledge and skills you acquired, in Australia, back home. Actually, to be frank, to showcase what you are up to, what you are doing here in Nepal. And, your knowledge and skills there might have contributed to your career, to your business, or simply shaped your outlook, or you must have forged friendships, partnerships, associations there. Now, let me, on this question, begin with Samir. Now, you have received numerous honors recognizing your impact on society. The University of Wollongong Excellence Award 2012, which is well after you graduated and returned home. Alumni Award for Social Impact, Western Sydney University's International Alumni of the Year Award 2017, Advanced Award for Social Impact, and so on. So obviously, these are ex-post developments. Early on, you didn't know, right? But you braved into Nepal and started off a career here. So please, and I'd also like to highlight the fact that he is a national leader in molecular diagnostics and infectious disease research. And he also has a strong media presence. And he seeks to also be, apart from a scientist, a communicator, trying to demystify, scientific things, or even if when a pandemic strikes, to demystify it to the wider public. So over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, the topic of what I studied in Australia, how useful it was when I came back to Nepal. I mean, COVID is an example. I came back from Australia 2004-05 after submitting my PhD thesis. So I came back in 2005, established, after working in Kathmandu University for 5 years, I established my organization with my friends in 2007-08. From 2007-08 until COVID, the pandemic struck in 2019, we had been doing what we started doing during COVID pandemic for at least 12 years already. So when COVID struck, we had all the tools. We knew how the virus works, how viruses impact the human body, how viruses replicate, how vaccines are made, how do you isolate viruses, how do you characterize viruses. We talked about different strains of COVID, the SARS-CoV-2, People were talking about sequencing, people were talking about PCR, CT value. We had been doing that for 12, 13 years already. That's what I studied in Australia. So when COVID struck, I was practicing in Nepal what the world just started learning. I mean, the rest of the world. In Nepal, we were already there. So that was the power of the Australian education I learned. My master's in recombinant DNA, my master's in immunology, my PhD in the area of biotechnology. We had the tools of the trade in our hands and in my organization that we established in 2008. So for us, when COVID struck, we were prepared. That is the power of education. When you are already there, when you have already learned the tools of the trade, it's not so scary anymore. So therefore, I was able to demystify, like you said, or break down or debunk a lot of the issues related to COVID during the pandemic, because I had the insight based on my knowledge. So yeah, so that's coming back to your question, that was something that the education really helped me. Now, what was the other part you mentioned that, apart from the Australian education, that was your main question, wasn't it? So yeah, that's basically the answer to the query you posed. So if there's something more we can discuss later. Thank you.
I'll come over to you in another question. So on my part, when I did my PhD in Australia in economics, what has helped me to date is the quantitative skills I acquired there. And I have been applying those quantitative tools, apart from analytical rigor, to the studies that I have been doing. And immediately after my PhD, I made it a point, and I fortunately succeeded also, in publishing all 3 chapters of my PhD thesis in good international, peer-reviewed journals. And that gave me further confidence. And even after that, although it is strictly speaking not really publish or perish for me, because I mostly do policy relevant but rigorous, research, I make it a point to, as far as possible, publish some of my studies in good, journals. So that, has helped me a lot. And also, we were tasked with reading journal articles and summarizing them, and also reviewing even journal articles that have been published in top journals. So we had to really rack our brains as to, find good aspects as well as some even slight, flaws in the, papers. And that has actually helped my, I think, analytical ability, writing skills, and so on. So again, now I'll come to Abhishek with almost the same question. And now you are a business person and entrepreneur, right? Leading a beverage industry, and Nepal's manufacturing sector is barely 5.56% of the GDP, which is a very struggling sector for various reasons. But there are pockets of successes, and beverage is a very important component, a sizable component of Nepal's manufacturing, industry. But it has its challenges. Oftentimes, the business community has a complaint that it's really hard, to work in a manufacturing sector. They basically say that it's relatively easy to import and to do so-called trade business, although it has its importance. I'm not belittling it, but you are in a sector that many people say is very, difficult manufacturing sector. So how have you put the knowledge and skills you have acquired, or even the networks that you have acquired, to your current, vocation?
So when I first came back in 2006, obviously I was into hospitality, but then you already had a license, which I had to restart the distillery. So I first started with Older Bar and 8848. But I'm going to deviate a little bit with the question, because the most challenging part I had was kind of navigating the political and bureaucratic landscape in Nepal. So that took most of my years in terms of the learning curve and how things work. But obviously in Australia, it was different. Obviously, everything was very systematic, whether be it in the hospitality sector or be it the manufacturing sector, everything was very systematic. But that's what I learned and what I cherished. And obviously, just going beyond the education, the society as such, people were very open-minded, and my university had at least 50% foreign students as well. That kind of helped me kind of navigate through the different cultures from different countries. And obviously, when I came back, after obviously coming through all the landscape difficulties I had, it kind of eventually helped me out kind of implement in regards to, because my love for beer grew from Australia as well. That's where I started. Like there was a brew pub called Four Pines in Manly. So I'm sure everybody knows where Manly is. That's where I studied. So that's where the love of beer started. So I always wanted to come back and start a brewery, but obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the licensing took forever. But obviously, all the education that I had in Australia helped me kind of build a brand, kind of work on the product and the core of what a product should be. And there were like a lot of MNCs that we had to kind of overcome. So, but just the education as such and the kind of society, I was there kind of looking into all the different branding and brands available there that was able to kind of help me introduce a lot of other products that we have introduced so far. Yeah, thank you for asking.
Again, the same question, but applied to your context as a person who has set up a startup, as I understand, and into the all-natural wellness products. Plus the fact that you are also into the IT industry. Over to you.
From the environment aspect, I have used it a lot in my business. So with my wellness and skincare hair care brand, I've tried to focus on social, ethical sourcing, with our ethical sourcing, like natural, all of that. I went to Australia and got really inspired. So in Australia, I saw a lot of people being aware about not using chemicals in their skin, not using chemicals for their hair, body, and that awareness there. But in Nepal, 5 years ago, I think that was lacking a little bit. And even if there were some products, they're all imported. So that gap was something I wanted to fulfill. So I got inspired from Australia. There were stores all over Australia that supplied all natural, chemical-free products. So that was one reason I started my skincare brand. About my IT company, that actually I used the networks I got from my university. So a few of my friends wanted BPO services for digital marketing. So they actually approached me for that. So that's how we started our IT company, and then we've now expanded to doing digital marketing and other sectors as well. So from the networks and the experiences I have gained from Australia, I think I as a person have evolved, and that I have that has also helped me enhance and evolve my business. So both of my businesses that I have started have been highly impacted by the education, by the experiences, and by the experiences that I've learned from Australia, that I've got from Australia.
Now to Ashlesha, the same question, but applied to the tourism context. How you relate that to what you learned there, coupled with the fact that we are yet to tap our tourism potential, including with regard to Australia. This data may be slightly dated, but until a couple of years ago, there were barely 37 or 40,000 Australian tourists. But the potential is huge. Over to you.
I chose University of Melbourne for a reason, and one of the best things that we did was, along with education, we worked with real companies. So for my audit course, we were working with Pitcher Partners. For accounting, we were working with either PwC, EY, KPMG, and as an accountant or someone who studied accounting, that's the holy grail of companies to work for. So for me, coming back to Nepal, starting Hotel Mechi Crown was, I don't know if I should call it an opportunity, a fluke, but we started Hotel Mechi Crown at 2020. So when I was back home, it was a business we were all starting together. It was hospitality Hotel Mechi Crown was one of our first step into hospitality as a family business. So I got a lot of trial and error I could play around with, because 2020 was also the year all the hotels were shut. So for me, getting that financial knowledge and the technical aspect from University of Melbourne's education helped me come back and curate my financial, my accounting systems, my audit processes, my entire internal control for the hotel, my legal compliances. And funny enough, Nepal shifted to NFRS, which is the International Financial Accounting Board back then. So it's a different sort of accounting. And I had studied that for 3 years. So I was one of, I could really pitch in with my CAs and my financial managers, because I had more up-to-date knowledge than they did. I had freshly come out of studying the very concept of IFRS. So, it helped me really put myself out there, show myself that I could prove myself to be someone at a young age. I can really turn out this organization and systemize it. And, other than just education, I think one of the biggest things that really helped me be who I am today is, I think in our previous panel discussion, one of the panelists had spoken about how Australians start working from the age of 13 and 14. So I had a very similar concept. I was 19 years old. I had the basic university lifestyle. I was drinking beers. I was partying. I was, enjoying my life as a student. So I had met this friend of mine. She's half Greek, half Australian. And she sat me down and she was like, you do understand we work here not to earn money, or not that we don't come from a privileged background. We work in Australia because we need the way of communication, the soft skills that you develop, and pretty much the basic concept of how to talk to a customer, because that, no matter what business you do, is very important. And I was thinking, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start a casual job. And I worked at Fitness First back then in Glen Waverley. And I had the best manager and my club manager. They were so flexible with the fact that I had my university, my working hours were less. But then, they were amazing people. And for me, they shaped the working culture an organization should have. And I brought that back to my hotel. In hospitality sector in Nepal, 5 years ago, if you looked at it, it was a very command and order structure. Hierarchy was a big thing for hospitality. You had a lot of trade unions, you had a lot of fights. Owners were on one side, employees were on the other side. So for Mechi Crown, I made it to a point where I wanted to showcase that love, that care, that empathy that my manager showed, which brought out a sort of normal, instinctive loyalty towards Fitness First. I wanted to portray that system today at Mechi Crown. So, I'm very happy to say that I think one of the very different working organizational culture we have in terms of hospitality is in Mechi Crown. I have a very low retention rate, whereas whereas our country always talks about a lot of people are leaving, a lot of employees, they move out, they go abroad after they have their working certificate. But at Mechi Crown, I have almost 60-65% of my staff that have stayed with us for the past 5 years, and I think that's something I'm very, very proud of. And this is something that I learned from Australia, gained experience, and I've been able to bring back and really showcase in my organization.
Indeed, inspirational. I think also for students who are, not yet decided as to where they should go and pursue their, higher studies. Before I, move on to the last, set of questions, on my part, I'm no, policy maker. However, what I've learned in Australia, I've been able to provide policy inputs based on it when the government of Nepal, for example, the Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Supplies, or the Ministry of Agriculture, or the National Planning Commission, which is the apex policy-making body, invite me to, make presentations on the economic issues, particularly with a focus on international trade. Nepal is graduating from the least developed country status next year in 2026 November, and that will have some, impact on the Nepali economy. What is the impact? What measures we should take? And these are the stuff they, seek my advice on, and I, provide those pieces of advice. And every time I do that, at the back of my mind, the theory and empirics that I learned there, and which I am putting to practice even daily, on a daily basis, have put me on a good steed. Now coming to the last question, which is a bit, forward looking, and I will begin with Dr. Dixit. So you are, again, an award-winning scientist. You are also a communicator, right? That's one point. And you, besides demystifying things that are scientific to the lay people, you also champion policy reform in various areas. So what is your take on the overall state of science, technology, innovation? And I'm asking this because, of course, economics is also a science, but you are a scientist, in the, medical, field. And science, technology, and innovation is a possible source of sustained economic growth in Nepal. And you have been toiling away in your area all these years since your return. So what policy and institutional bottlenecks do you identify in fostering, over to you, in fostering applied science in Nepal? And do you also have any thoughts on how to retain scientific talent? Because in the context of Nepal, medical doctors, going abroad has been an issue in recent years. Over to you.
I'll stay with the science and technology. So I have advised Ministry of Science, then Ministry of Science and Technology, now Education, Science and Technology. I've advised Ministry of Health and Population also on the science-related public health domains. If I start talking about the situation of STEM, at least science and technology research, I focus on research in Nepal. I mean, I could go on for hours, but I won't. So there's still issues, but then there are improvements. Over the last, if you say over the last 10 years or 12 years, there has been improvements. Thanks mostly to a lot of the returnees coming back, whether from Australia in this case or could be other destinations also. I've known quite a few individuals that have actually come back and that started contributing to science and technology. So that way the future looks a bit brighter than it was maybe 15 years ago. So that option, that part is there. So the one constant issue that I should point out is the gain versus the drain, the continuous points for the topic for discussion and debates. We are losing a lot of scientists in science and technology, and I will give you an example of my own organization that I started in 2007-8. Over the last 18 years, we have had a turnaround of I don't know, one person every 2 years, actually more than that, about 2 to 3 scientists in my lab leaving every year or two. So basically you can count over the last 18 years, at least 30, 32 really young upcoming scientists, researchers leaving. And I'm happy to say that it's mostly Australia, but at the same time it's also very sad that because we're losing them. And there's a really good talent. So that is an issue that I've been facing, even though we're training young people all the time. But the fact that they leave and they go away is a challenge, and this gathering of individuals involved in study abroad and in the recruitment today should also take note of that. While we are happy to see them get higher ground and get in better opportunities overseas, we also need to see if we can inculcate that thought of wanting to come back like we have, to come back with that knowledge and also try to contribute back, in my case, science and technology in Nepal. So these are two areas we must have a parallel conversation, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to Abhishek. Now, when I went through your bio, I came across a statement that you aspire to take Nepali craftsmanship in beer making to the global stage. And my current understanding is that Nepal's liquor industry or beverage industry is currently mostly caters to the domestic market. At the same time, Nepalese diaspora, which is spread all over the world, they crave everything to do with Nepal, right? And hence we export, although in small quantities, everything from chura, beaten rice, or pickles, to even beer. Now, what prospect do you see for the Nepali beverage industry to shift from one that is focused on the domestic market to one that has international aspirations also? And will this diaspora link probably help?
When you look at Australia itself, I was just discussing earlier, like 300,000 people living in Australia. That's a lot of people. And of course, there's Europe, there's Middle East, there's Asia, there's America as well. So the whole kind of volume of people living abroad creates a huge opportunity for us, especially like in the liquor industry as such. So we've kind of we've noticed this 5 or 6 years back when we saw a lot of people leaving. Obviously there's been a lot of export of the achars and churas and all those masalas and stuff like that. But we were not really focusing in the market back then, but we took a bold step to kind of really cater, kind of expand on this horizon, because we saw a lot of people moving away. Our industry in Nepal itself was kind of diluting. So hence, I mean, we've been growing like 100% for the last, in terms of export, we've been growing at least 80, 85, 86% ever since we kind of start taking this step. But obviously there's a lot of product aligned in the next couple of years where we want to kind of elevate, because when I first came in, it was obviously very difficult to challenge. It was a very challenging subject in regards to creating a brand. It was very difficult for people to convert from like Diageo-based, like black label or red label, to drinking older bar. People would say, why should I try older bar? You know, so the mindset has kind of, the paradigm shift has happened now. And now we see a high potential areas for export, especially all this focused on this concentrated diasporic sphere, be it Sydney, be it NSW or like Melbourne or any other country. But we are already working on it, and I think we'll be launching a product end of this year, catering specifically to all the duty-free market, as well as the Nepalese community living abroad. And obviously, we're trying to focus, that's been the major topic of discussion within the company itself. How do you, because we are pretty much saturated the market in Nepal, so we want to kind of expand. So where the expansion is going to happen is obviously all these countries. So we are kind of working on it, so we see a lot of potential on that. Yep.
Now to Arushree. So again, you are heading a venture that produces all natural wellness products. You know, I'll focus on that, with some backward linkages to the Nepali economy, which is very important. And you are also exploring international markets, and you are already ISO certified. That's what I learned when I went through your website and did some basic research on my part. And it emphasizes ethical production and sustainability consciousness. Now, again, as a landlocked country, Nepal faces certain high costs that it cannot really beat. And to offset that, one argument is that products that are of relatively high value, if of low volume, that draws on local raw materials, and that are advertised genuinely as nature-based products that have been produced or sourced in a very sustainable manner, will give a competitiveness edge to Nepali products and exports that just relying on low wages won't give us. After all, we are also a landlocked country. So how are you managing your global aspirations in terms of exporting it and advertising it as a sustainability-based product?
So when we initially started, we wanted to focus on the Nepal market because we saw like a gap of, as I mentioned before, like natural products in Nepal. And so after a few years, we started doing third-party manufacturing for international companies. So that was one of our biggest steps that we have taken. So we've done third-party manufacturing for a company in Japan and a company in Australia. So that actually helped us bring an edge because through the third-party manufacturing, obviously in the labels, it's mentioned like manufactured by Avani Nepal, a Nepali product. So that was one step that we wanted to enter the international market. Obviously, there is extreme competition in the international market, and because we're such a small country with very little resources, it gets challenging to manufacture and to supply our products in bulk, as you've mentioned. So we're trying to tap more of like, premium but yet affordable and easily accessible products all around the world. So we have started exporting to India. Even though India, we import a lot of skincare, haircare brands from India, we wanted to change that. We wanted to send some of our products to India and promoted it as like formulated in Nepal, made in Nepal, so that it's a bit exotic. And we've also started our export to Myanmar, and also we're in talks to exporting to Australia other than the third-party manufacturing. So even though it is tricky, I think Nepal, like Himalayan and Nepal, people see it as like exotic. So that helps us like market and be unique in the international market. So people are like, oh, it's made in Nepal, so everyone wants to try it. And we've tried to make our packaging very international, and we've tried, like you've mentioned, we've got all the certifications. So from that, we are trying to, the certifications are for obviously for Nepal as well, but for the international market, all these certifications help us export in an easier manner. So I think that's about it.
Fabulous. Actually, you are productive and you are also special, in the sense that there is a lot of, theory and empirical evidence in international trade that not all firms are able to export, because now you are going to another market where there's a lot of competition, right? So it's very difficult to break into export markets, as you just said, but you are trying and in the process of doing that. So I think that's very useful, inputs for our policymakers also, right? And I think they should, and when I have the opportunity, I will, draw their attention to the fact that you have already acquired some certification and are venturing abroad. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Now coming to Ashlesha, again you are at the helm of a 5-star deluxe hotel, and you are also active in various umbrella associations, and you are an executive board member of Hotel Association of Nepal, and you also represented Nepal as the youngest and the only delegate representing Nepal at BIMSTEC. So BIMSTEC, to the uninitiated, is the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Technical and Economic Cooperation, which is basically a grouping of Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand and Myanmar, whose vision is to serve as a bridge between South Asia and Southeast Asia. Now, hotel capacity is reportedly enough to accommodate as at least 3 million tourists per year, as per various estimates. But the country struggles to attract even a third of that, And the private sector, in my view, is betting very high on the on future tourist flows, if not current tourist flows, going by the investment, domestic as well as foreign investment, that is being plowed into the hotel industry in Kathmandu or elsewhere. Now you are heading a hotel outside of Kathmandu, which means that you see prospects for tourism diversification. And tourism diversification is something that is a constant refrain in our policy documents and program documents, but we really haven't been able to do much about it. But the fact that you are there means that you feel confident that tourists will come there or are already coming. So what prospect or future do you see for Nepal's tourism?
Like you mentioned, with the private sector, there are a lot of investments and heavy investments, not just through domestic, but international hotel chains have also taken Nepal as a really good investment platform for their brands. Now, when we talk about numbers, I would say even the 1 million of tourist arrivals that we count in Nepal is actually not accurate, because when you count tourist arrivals in Nepal's statistic aspect, they also count non-resident Nepalese. And they're not here to, take a hotel room and go around in tourism packages. They have their home here, they're just residents of outside Nepal now. So for us, actual tourism statistics are quite ambiguous, I would say. But the hotel capacity is increasing, the investment is increasing, because we believe in Nepal. We believe in Nepal as a product. Today we're very well known as a mountainous, adventurous country, and that comes with passion. We're known as a religious place, religious tourism, and that comes with faith. But what about luxury? What about nature's best kept secrets? Those are things we need to advertise. We have so many beautiful places in Nepal that are still hard to get to because of air connectivity, land connectivity, and we see government has now put a lot of focus, I would say, because we're slowly pushing this concept of making Nepal so much more than just mountains and just, being a place where you have to trek. I had a lot of friends in Australia, and even when I travel these days, I meet a lot of different nationality people, and I'm like, where all are you visiting when you're doing a whole South Asia or Asian sort of tour? And they leave Nepal out because everyone thinks in order to come to Nepal, you need a backpack and you have to stay in 15 days of really harsh conditions. And that's not true. We have a lot of beautiful places where if you're not a trekking or a hiking person, you still have a lot of options. So, we're focusing on marketing with that through Hotel Association Nepal. We're consistently working with Nepal Tourism Board. I don't know if it's public knowledge yet, but soon enough, we're gonna work with TikTok as a platform to start advertising more of Nepal and go beyond the traditional mountain advertisement. And we're also working with Ministry of Tourism and Aviation, as well as Ministry of Road Transport and Infrastructure Development to get Fast Track, which is Nepal's massive development project that connects east to west. And of course, our 3 national airports, out of which 2 are not working right now. So for us, as private sector, we see that there is so much potential if we just push a little bit harder, work a little bit harder, and for us, if we get that sorted, which is the connectivity aspect and the awareness, which is the advertisement aspect, we, from the tourism and hospitality sector, believe that there's not much we need to do after that. Opening a hotel in Sapa, we were the first 5-star hotel in East itself, and people laughed at us when we first went there and we were starting to construct. Everyone had a lot of negative feedbacks when it came to opening up a hotel, but we had a vision. We saw that, Indian tourists are more than capable of just being able to run a hotel for us. And that's the case right now. For me, at Mechi Crown, I have 95% of my tourists comes from India. And we started off as a casino-based property, and gambling was the big way of attracting Indian tourists. But today we've moved on from that. My almost 60% of my revenue last year came from wedding destination. So now we've curated an entire package of weddings for the Indian clientele. So, when you start creating the platform, when you start opening doors, then things start working out for yourself. So I think Nepal as a whole can take a very good example of what we did in Sapa, because today we've opened up cross-border tourism. I have 5-6 properties coming up in Sapa. There's 3, 4, 5-star hotels coming in Biratnagar, whereas before Biratnagar was only seen as an industrial district. Today, with the border side tourism, it could become another hub of hotels and destination weddings. Bhairava has done the same thing. We see Nepalganj coming up the same way. So, we opened up the concept and we took it to another level when it came to weddings and gambling. So I hope that, as different minds from the private sector, from the government sector, we can do a similar aspect for Nepal. And rather than just focusing on capacity and number, we need to start focusing on our strategy of how do we advertise Nepal as a whole, because every corner of Nepal has something that 100% any global citizen would love and would be able to enjoy and experience in their own way. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, you are a pioneer, you and your family, in venturing outside of Kathmandu and establishing such a hotel. And hopefully you will be reaping, satisfaction and rich rewards, based on that. Now, to come to the end of the, session, I don't need to do any, summarizing, but I think one key takeaway here is that you can't stop people from going abroad, whether to work or to study or both. Now, but the fact remains that there are some people who are, returning and making their mark. And some of them are pioneers, whether in the biomedical science sector, or in tourism, or in setting up startups, or in the beverage industry, and they are contributing. Now, oftentimes we say that an enabling environment is required for Nepal to develop. But here I also see that an enabling environment is required to tap those who have returned, and in a way encourage them to stay here, as well as create an enabling environment so that people who are abroad, for example, Nepalese who have decided to settle abroad in, for example, Australia, to use their networks with their own knowledge of Nepal and those who are back here, and create jobs here. And some of you are already, doing that. And that's, I think, is a positive note in an otherwise, quite bleak, landscape on the economic front in Nepal. So thank you again, AAERI, for making this happen. And I really appreciate the insights that you shared. Thank you.